I have to start on time, which is basically about now. So, question, who is here because they want to grow their firm? Good, most of you are in the right place. So, what am I going to be talking about today? Why is it that some people manage to make it look easy to grow their firm? You've seen them on social media, haven't you? They're hustling, they're bustling, they've won this many clients and they've grown it by this much and they've put their prices up. And how many of you are feeling, why can't it be as easy for me? It's a bit quiet, put your hand up. Who's thinking, absolutely, who's thinking, why can't it be like that for me? And this is the thing, I've worked with over 100 accountants in the last 4 years, helping them grow their practice. And actually, there are things that is going to make your journey to £1 million much easier. Do you know what the first thing is? Buy a practice worth £1 million. But very seriously speaking, we're going to be talking about what really makes a difference. Now, there's a preconception out there that what really makes a difference is that you're good at winning work. Anybody believe that? If all it takes is to win work and you'll have a £1 million practice. Anybody else thinking that? We've got some no's over here. That's the reality. Yes, you've got to learn to win work, but there's so much more skills, because when it comes to growing a practice, it's hard for these reasons. So the first thing, how many of you wish you could recruit right now? So true, isn't it? It's like, you know, we talked to our sister company, the Accountants Recruiter, finding good new employees, but it's easier to get blood out of a stone right now. It's really difficult. So there's that. The other thing, I'm a business owner like yourselves. It's pretty lonely, isn't it? It's pretty damn lonely. Who do you speak to? Who do you speak to when it gets tough? And then, of course, there's the rising inflation and the economy's about to turn turtle. It plays with your mind, doesn't it? It really plays with your mind. And how many of your institute qualifications that you spent years gaining helped you learn to grow your practice? Where's all the hands going up? Oh, so nobody's taught you how to do it. So this is what we're going to look at today. We're going to dig first and foremost into what actually gets it to be stressful. And I'm not talking about the damn clients, the damn team. It'd be much easier if we didn't have any of those, wouldn't it? We're not talking about that. So we're going to go deep into what actually makes it stressful and anxious. We're then going to look at growing pains, because that's your biggest source of stress. It's when you get into that growing pains area. And I've been there for 2 years. And so being good at, knowing commercial stuff, being able to advise clients doesn't make it any easier when it's your own business. We're then going to look at a brief look at how one of our members really grew his practice by attracting the right sort of client. And then I'm going to give you some of what the Accountants Recruiter have been telling us on how you're going to find and keep your best team members. So I've got a couple of Accountants Growth Club members in the room. Can you just put your hands up? I think there's some at the back there. They promised me they'd be there. But seriously, if you want to find out more about the club, go and speak to them. They'll tell you exactly like it is. I'm confident they will probably tell you really like it is, and I may not want to hear it, but actually go and ask them. So let's look at the first thing. What really does cause stress and anxiety? Now, of course, team members do, clients do, but actually what really does? Because it doesn't matter what size your practice is, it's always going to be stressful. It's always going to be anxious. There's always going to be those moments. But why is it that some accountancy firm owners just manage to kind of almost sail through it? Or they get like me with lots of grey hair very quickly. What is the secret? What is it? Well, the reality is that there is a bell curve around pressure versus performance. Now, I used to put it as performance versus stress, but when I did this with lawyers, they said, no, we are a law firm. We don't put stress on our people. We put pressure on them. So I had to change it. So, yeah, absolutely. You do what you can with these people. But what happens is we actually have to have a minimum amount of pressure to perform at our best. Did you know that when you wake up in the morning, your body puts some of the stress hormones in you, cortisol, to help you bounce up and be wide awake? I'm pretty sure my teenagers want to stop that with me in the morning. Yeah, my teenagers don't like me in the morning, particularly if I'm singing. They will say to each other, oh, mother's been working out again. But literally that's what it is. But what happens is that level of stress, that pressure then gets to the point where it gets unhealthy. Then you pass a point of fatigue. And then you pass another point where you get into that really unhealthy level, where you're into burnout, you're into mental health. I'm pretty sure most of us at some point during COVID felt a little bit of this burnout. Am I right? Put your hands up. Absolutely, absolutely. We've all felt it. The thing is, when you grow your practice, the level of pressure you're under just increases. Think about your first wage bill when you had your first employee. It felt pretty scary, didn't it? Now think about your wage bill now. How scary does that feel? In fact, my wage bill is bigger than some of my biggest months 2 years ago. To say that plays with your mind is absolutely true. And so the reality is, as your firm grows, you've got to be able to cope with higher levels of pressure. It comes with the territory, because there's more stuff to juggle. But what is it that helps you cope with higher levels of pressure? It's about coping strategies. So what are these coping strategies? Because when you do these coping strategies, your personal resilience increases. Now, I'm going to be quite boring. Sleep. We all know that sleep is the foundation of everything. Sleep, it's what I call the 4 foundations habits. Sleep, exercise, recharge time, and nutritious food and drink. What I'm not talking about is a better quality bottle of red wine. You meant to laugh at that point, by the way. But, so we're talking about that. But it's also more than the 4 foundational habits. I think our members have really discovered that having a supportive community around you really helps. In fact, I remember one member, am I allowed to swear, by the way? Am I allowed to swear? So we run a daily drop-in for all of our members Monday to Friday between 9 and 9:30. And I know, Michael, you come most mornings. Lorna leads the Tuesday one. And this member came on and he said, it's a, insert the F word, disaster. But he said it a bit more like, it's a disaster. And we spent half an hour sorting out his problems for him on that call. And that's what a supportive community can do. They can really help you see perspective. They can really help you get what you need to get. But also, it's about reconnecting with your why. How many of you can relate to this? I've had some pretty horrible patches over the last 2-3 years. Any of you follow me on LinkedIn? The ankle and foot saga is still going on. And yeah, it still is, David. It still is. It's still going on. And there are many times that I've thought, why am I doing this? Can anybody relate to that? You think, why don't I just exit, pocket the money, put it into an investment fund and go back and get a proper job? Or is that just what my mother tells me to do? But it's about reconnecting with that why. Working out why you're doing what you're doing. Because every time I go through a rough patch, I go, to hell with it all. And then I think, I'll get bored within 3 to 6 months. So I might as well just get this right now. And the other thing that can really help you build your resilience is coaching. Now I know, I'm a coach, I would say that. But why does it really help? Well, a lot of our stress, a lot of anxiety comes from the stories we've got in our head. One of the stories is when a team member leaves and it's not particularly amicable. One of the stories you often go is, I can't manage people, it's all my fault. Anybody relate to that one? Yeah, there's some heads nodding. And that story perpetuates. And that's actually when you have some coaching, you can help unpick the story and realize and get that sense of perspective. And these can really help you sort that out. But when you look at it, when you think about it, stress is always future focused. Think about it. Every time you get stressed about something, it's always future, isn't it? What happens if that client leaves? What happens if that team member doesn't send something? What happens? It's always future, isn't it? Am I right? Absolutely. It's always future focused. But the problem is when we're growing our firm is that we have to go into the future. And our brain is set up to actually scare us into staying in our comfort zone, staying in our status quo. In fact, if it sees anything that's uncertainty, doubt, or fear, it goes into a flight or fight mode, and it actually puts that little voice in our head that says, stay there. You only wanted to be $250,000. Get you. Why don't you want to be bigger than that? And it almost wants to scare us into staying there. But actually, we've got to overcome that. If we're going to grow our firm, we've got to step out of the comfort zone. We've got to be prepared to do that. So we've got to reduce our stress when thinking about the future. The problem is, if we want to grow our firm, we've got to go into the future. The future is stress-focused, am I right? So already our brain is going, don't go there, don't go there, but we've got to go there. So what are the answers? Well, the first answer is have a growth plan. I know that sounds simple, but I'm not talking about a business plan that you write and you put in a drawer and you leave for 3 years and then get out in about 3 years' time. I'm talking about something that you're working on, that's got contingency, that's got scenarios, that you look at most days. Because when you've got a plan, the uncertainty reduces. Uncertainty causes stress, causes anxiety. So when you have a plan, that anxiety reduces. So what else helps reduce that stress? Actually, being with a like-minded community that are all doing similar things really helps. You know, you talk to any of our members, they'll tell you how much comfort they get by being with other accountants that want to grow, other accountants that have got the t-shirt. Of course, coaching can always help, but it is really the simple things to reduce that. But one of the big areas is about growing pains. Anybody experience growing pains? I know I have. We grew by 30% in the pandemic. I wish I hadn't. Anybody else thought that? Yeah, been there, done that. So why is it that growing pains happen? Because these are probably the most stressful, anxious moments on your way to a £1 million firm. So why do these happen? Well, first off, it's often because we get our business model wrong right from the start. So what do I mean by wrong? Well, do you remember those early days where you were getting in and you didn't have staff? Maybe you were working from home, so you kept your prices low, didn't you? Yeah, you know you did, didn't you? You kept them low. And you won your first few clients, and you won a few more clients, then a few more clients. Then before you realised it, you were undercharging and you didn't have enough time. Because this is the problem, is that if we don't charge enough from the start, we don't have the profit margin to bring in great team members. And if we don't have the profit margin to bring in great team members, we cobble together some freelancers, but we don't get the service, and then we get into a little bit of a loop. And if we're going to get and grow, we've got to be able to afford good team members. So one of the first things we often have to fix is get the business model right. Because most of you, if you've got stuck, it's very often because the business model is wrong right from the start. For example, we're working with a member right now, and actually we are helping him do a repricing because he hadn't repriced since 2007 for some of his clients. From the numbers that we're hearing, he will grow by 40 to 50% as a result of that price increase, just getting to the right level. But the amount of stress and conversations and hand-holding that we needed to do to help them get there. But they can now afford the people to grow. But then, of course, this not charging enough then compounds the problem because we then run out of time, don't we? So I want to take you through this red, black, blue model. So imagine each of your time as a colour assigned. So the blue activities, the stuff that are into the future, the sky blue thinking, the strategy, the growth plan bit that we were talking about, that's the blue stuff. The thinking about, do I need to bring in a new revenue stream? Shall I do a fee increase? That's blue stuff. So what happens is, as we grow, we tend to do a lot of black stuff. Black stuff is front office stuff, it's client work, it's stuff that puts money into our bank balance. The red stuff is stuff that is back office stuff. It's the cost of being in business. So as we grow, what happens is we start to do a lot of black stuff because we need to earn money, don't we? And so we squeeze a bit of blue stuff. And then we bring on a member of staff because we run out of black stuff who takes some of the low value stuff off us. But we actually still have to manage these staff. Nobody told me that. I thought I could bring in ready-made, ready-to-go staff, but no, we have to manage them. We have to tell them what's expected of them. We have to do the supervisory bit, all of this sort of stuff. That's a bit of red stuff. And before you know it, as we grow, we lose the blue stuff. And then we end up being really chargeable, but needing to be less chargeable if we're going to grow. And these are two of the fundamental issues. And actually, when you come down to most of our growing pains, it comes down to these two things. We've got the wrong business model that's not scalable, and we don't have time to implement. So I'm just going to look at some of our key leadership priorities. So when we start at that lovely 0 to 50 grand, who remembers those early days? We had a vision, didn't we? It might have just been to pay the bills, but we had a vision. And at the time, we didn't think it was simple, but now we do, don't we? Yeah, you can relate to that. We thought it was simple. And at that stage, our leadership priority is to win work, service work. It's not really much more complicated than that, was it? But it felt complicated at the time, didn't it? And if we're going to get beyond approximately 50 to 250k, we actually have to bring in a team. We actually have to go from you to a team. And suddenly, we've got more things to do. We've actually got to learn to delegate. Oh, who knew? We've got to trust our team. We've got to actually move from being the only person in the business to managing a team. And this is very often that if you're struggling to move from 50 to 250K, it's either because we need to get serious about managing the team, or our prices are wrong and we can't afford to bring in good enough people to do that. So what happens when we go from 250 to 500,000? Well, this is another tough stage of growth. But once you're through this, you'll be good to know that it gets easier from this stage. When we get to 250 to 500,000, we actually have to restructure. Because what we often find is that we've got a hub, which is us, and then we've got a wheel of lots of spokes, and we've got clients, we've got staff, we've got everybody coming into us. And it feels like everyone wants a piece of us. Can anybody relate to that one? Yeah, we've got a few people here. We can relate. Everybody wants a piece of it. It's only us that can take a decision. And you know what? We have no blue time left. We have absolutely no blue time left. It feels incredibly stressful. So at this stage, it is about restructuring the team, actually getting responsibilities to move down. It is about taking stuff off our plate. And it is the really scary bit of reducing our personal chargeable time. I'm not going to, you're not going to grow your practice if you're still chargeable 3 to 4 days a week at this stage. And you know what? There's an ego problem here. How many of you really quite enjoy the fact that your clients like working with you, not your team, but you? There's a bit of an ego problem you need to get over. There's a bit of a status issue, isn't it? We're literally next door in this theatre, and I've got Dan and I've got Yasmin in my team who are awesome. And they do a great job. But there is part of me that goes, but don't they want to work with me? But we can't grow with that attitude. And then when you get to 500,000 to 1 million, it is about culture, KPIs. It is about making sure your practice management system is working. It's about looking for those profit holes, because they will be there. We get very complacent when we have a nice bit of money going into the bank. We stop looking at what's going on to the same extent. So it's about looking for those profit holes. We may, when some members join us this big, we sometimes have to go back a couple of stages because it's not right. So these are the key leadership priorities. Oops, I've moved a bit quickly. So we've done those 4 leadership priorities. And you might be thinking, oh, there's a lot of detail there. Now, if any of you want the slides, come and see us on the Practice Growth stand, give us your card, let us know you want these slides, and I'll get them sent over to you. But it doesn't matter where you are, there are 4 key ingredients that you have to maximise. You've got to guard your own time. You really cannot do this if your time is not focused and it's not put into place. One of our international members, one of our international members literally uses us on a week-by-week basis to focus her time so he has time to spend on what really matters. She actually sent me an email this week, said, thank you, it's made a real difference. My son's getting married, I can now focus on the business in the morning. Thank you for letting me have that permission. It's not all work we do in the club. Then the next thing is, you've got to make sure you've got cash. You're accountants, I don't need to talk to you about why we need cash, but we do. And then it is about, have we got the right process and systems in place, and are we managing our resource and capacity? And at every stage of your growth, if you are not looking at those 4 ingredients every single month, that is when you start to hit growing pains. That is when the wheels come off the bus, so to speak. So how do you avoid this? So I've already talked about guarding your time. Have a growth plan. And I know I've said this a few times, but if you are looking ahead, anticipating the next stage of growth, you're not going to get into the point where your firm overtrades, you've got too many calls on time, because you realise, because very often we kind of go, oh, I've got to pay for that new team member, so I will become more charge of myself so I can afford it, but then I don't have time to work on the business, then I don't have this time to do the fee increase, then I don't have time to do this, then I don't have time to do that. Whereas if we're looking ahead and anticipating, everything just gets easier on the way to that first million. But we've talked about measuring the capacity and resource, we've talked about that, but it's so important prioritising self-care. Why is it? Do we think that we can perform at our best when we're working 50, 60, 70-hour weeks? We kid ourselves, don't we? Particularly in January. Take-out January, as one of my members tells me, is not a healthy place to be. Anybody else have take-out January? You live on a diet of pizza? Or is it Indian? Or is it Chinese? But it's not healthy, is it? It's really not healthy. Just at the point where we have to be at our best, it's not healthy. And if you go back to how do we cope with higher levels of pressure, prioritizing self-care is absolutely key. But also it's about measuring and monitoring your KPIs. Because when you're looking at your capacity, when you're looking at your resource, you can start to anticipate, when am I going to start to overtrade? How do I deal with that? What does that look like? But too often we tell our clients that numbers are important, don't we? We say it's really important to know your own position. But how many of you file your tax return on the last day of the year? Yeah, I know most of you do. And you take pride in it, don't you, as well? It's like this badge of honour. I'm an accountant. I filed it on the 31st of January at 10 p.m. at night. Go me. But this is what we do, don't we? And we also make sure we file our year-end accounts 9 months to the date after they're due, because we're an accountant. But actually, we have to take some of our clients' own medicine. We are cobbler's children in doing what we do. Now, some of you probably thought you were coming here because you wanted to win more clients to fuel your growth. So let me tell you a story about one of our members. So it was about 150 when he joined us. And he said to me, he said, Heather, I'm not doing this niche thing. I'm not doing it. I don't need to do it. He wasn't winning as much work as he would like. So we said, humour me, Heather. Let's have a chat about this. And I said, well, what is it that you really like and enjoy? And he said, he's Mancunian, and I don't have a Manchester accent, but he said, I like people that make and move stuff up in the Northwest. Oh, and on QuickBooks. Okay. How are you attracting them? Well, I'm not. Oh, right, so we need to do something about this. So all he did was change his QuickBooks directory. In fact, I wrote it for him. We're a little bit hands-on in the club, what we do. That's why we're slightly different. I wrote his QuickBooks directory entry, and I wrote his LinkedIn profile. And it said, we make and move things in the Northwest. Within 3 weeks, he had 2 new clients won that were the highest fee that he'd ever won for a new client. And this is why you've got to do step 1. What is your ideal client? It doesn't necessarily need to be sector related. We've got members in the club that are family business. We've got members of the club that are cross-jurisdictional businesses. We've got members of the club that deal with growing businesses. It doesn't necessarily have to be sector based. Anyway, so the member started growing his practice, and COVID hit. And he had August 2020, he had no leads. This had never happened to him before. He had no leads. And he turned around to me and said, Heather, we need to do some work on this. And I said, right, okay, let's look at this. I said, so you make and move stuff. It's all very well having a website saying we make and move stuff, but I could have removed that and it could have been to anyone. And by the way, if you think your website probably needs a bit of a look at, come over and talk to us next door. We'll give you some honest feedback about your website and where you can change things. So we started to look at actually how to make his business more attractive to people that made and move things. So we started to talk a lot more about financing. He stopped doing a bland content feed that he bought off one of the providers. What he actually started to do was he started to do a little video, Paul's Tough Talking Tips. That's what he did, Paul's Tough Talking Tips. And he realised that they were really hitting home when 3 of his clients rang him up and said, you know, Paul, that you said I should get a bounce back loan if I can, because I'm never going to get a cheaper rate of interest. And if I can't make money off a 50 grand loan over 10 years, I should go out of business. And they went, I've got the bounce back loan. What do I do now, Paul? So these things started to make a difference. We rewrote the copy on his website. We built a content plan. We made him attractive to his ideal clients. But most importantly, he was about 250 at the time, is we started marketing to his internal client base. So as soon as you get more than 100, 150 grand, marketing to your internal client base is one of the most important routes to market. It's one of the quickest routes to market. And with just a few coaching calls, he was winning 5 to 10 grand a month of new business every single month. He's now put his prices up. He now turns around to me and says, Heather, I cannot stop this juggernaut anymore. This work is coming through. I even quote them silly fees and they still say yes. So there's a really important thing in message here is, 1, work out who your ideal client is. And if you're saying small growing businesses, that's not your ideal client. It's got to be more specific than that. If you're saying we want to work with 500 to 20 million growing businesses, that's what I call a unicorn. Everybody wants them because they pay good fees, don't they? And most of all, unicorns get built. We tend to get unicorns in our practice because we grow them. So really focus on who you want and be specific about it, and then get your message out to them. So my final bit of content is, how do we get and find and keep the right people? How do we do this? So I spoke to Donna at the Accountants Recruiter, and I said, what is the state of the marketplace right now? How do we do this stuff? And she said, don't skimp on salaries. I know what accountants are like. You know about overheads, don't you? You know about fixed costs. You will try and get away with a below market salary. By the way, that is not going to cut it anymore. We have to pay what the market is saying. And you might kind of go, but I can't afford it. Then we need to have a conversation about your prices because they're too low. The next thing is put your salary on your advert. You know, people want to know. They're not going to come and contact you without that. So these are some of the key things. The other thing is work with a specialist accountancy recruiter. Work with a specialist accountancy recruiter. Those are going to help you find the right members of staff. But how do you keep them? Well, the first thing is, as I said, I don't want to claim how many years I've been in accountancy, but it's the same things that people in accountancy want. They want an interesting job. Tends to be, if they're younger on the side, they want progression and they want variety. But they want an interesting job and they want to be seen to be wanted. So share your growth plans with them. You know, have a career plan for them, particularly with your younger members of staff. Sit down regularly every 3 months and talk about their development, where you want them to go, where you see their future. Bring them into your practice. If you have an us versus them attitude, you're not going to keep the best people. And it really takes a lot of two-way dialogue to do this. Now, I could summarize by going, look, you need a growth plan, you need to look ahead, you need to be aware of your growing pains, and if your growth plan and looking ahead, you should maximize those out. I could talk about knowing your why, the 4 core ingredients. Now, this is all going to help you get to £1 million practice, but actually, what is really going to help you get there? Very simply, take action. You're all here because you want to grow your practice, am I right? But how many of you are prepared to take a first step? Good, come and talk to me afterwards. Hey, I'm doing well, aren't I? But, you know, we need to take a first step. The next thing is, if you've hit a plateau, if you don't know where you're going, get help. I just think about how we've helped so many members of the club actually move forward with that help. And I said, look, there's a couple of people here, they'll quite happily talk to you afterwards. They'll tell you the good, the bad, the ugly. One of our growth specialists used to be a former model, so he's not the ugly one. You know, they will tell you the inside story. By the way, that's true, by the way. He is a former model, one of our growth specialists. Just the best for you, by the way. He's a former model. So, and then, once you do that, identify your why. Are you looking for something to grow a pension pot? Are you thinking about a succession plan? Are you thinking about, you know, top 100, here I come? What is your why? Why are you doing it? Because that is going to help you through the tough patches. Remember talking about resilience? Knowing your why, it's going to help you through the tough patches. And then finally create that growth plan, because only when you know your why can you create that growth plan. Otherwise you're going to build something that isn't for you. So, if you're ready to take action, if you're ready on that first step, in front of you, and for those of you that are at back that don't have a brochure, don't have a leaflet, come and see us next door, because we've got all of that stuff. Literally, the Accountants Growth Club is next door. We've got lots of brochures, we've got lots of leaflets. Come on our How to Grow Your Practice, the Low Stress Way, on the 22nd of June. If you look at the leaflet in front of you, take a picture here. I'll just get over to the side, take a picture here. It will take you straight to it. We only have 15 places. But if you take action within the next 7 days, you can come to this workshop for £50. Instead of £250, £50. We'd love to see as many of you there, but this is a good next step. It will help you reconnect with why you're doing what you're doing. It'll help you build the start of a growth plan, and it will prompt you into action. This is a really easy first step. So, I'm going to open it up to questions. This is a really good question. How many of us feel overwhelmed with what we've got to do right now? Yeah, there's loads of it. Absolutely loads of it. It all starts by small steps. Sitting there in overwhelm isn't helping anyone. All we do is get slightly more stressed, slightly more overwhelmed, and when you're in that stress and overwhelm, we can't do all of that stuff. And our brain just starts firing lots of self-doubt. It's all future-focused, The key thing is to look at, how do I find the first few steps? A good coach will help you find those first few steps. It can be, very often we can bring the perspective that other people can't see. You know, I've sat there with people like you that going, I'm overwhelmed. And then we discovered one of her bookkeepers was underperforming and she was doing their job. And I'm like, fire her. And she was like, I can't do that, I can't do that. Anyway, the thought festered, and just before she was about to fire her, the person resigned. But she'd already anticipated, and Donna in the accountant's recruiter had already started recruiting a replacement. So she had very little downtime. So the key is, I don't know what the answer is, but very often it's planning and review time. Right, let's just take an hour out. Let's just write down everything that needs to be done. Let's see what the trends are and let's prioritize. But it really does start with, what's my growth plan? And if you're overwhelmed, it's very much, I'm probably doing too much client work. So what can I do? Do I outsource in some of the early days? You know, we really do recommend outsourcing. I think it's about 80% of the club members outsource. So absolutely. Does that help you? Any other questions? Well, I'm going to be here for the next 15 minutes, so come and have a chat. But thank you very much. If you are interested in joining the club, there are club members around the room. They've been there, they've done that. And we've also got growth specialists next door, so come and have a chat. We've got brochures, we've got leaflets. Thank you all very much for coming.